So today I'd like to tell you something about FSHARP make or fake, which is a DSL for build tasks and more, which is like kind of their motto. This is a presentation more for .NET developers, which I can see that you are here. So that's great. I will be talking about several things. One is what is fake, why should we use it, or why should we consider using it. I will show you some basic usage, how you can extend it, and I will shortly tell you something about the alternatives. If you have any questions, just ask them right away. You don't need to wait till the end of the presentation. So, what is fake? Can you see? Yeah, good. Because my notes are a bit broken here, but it's good that you can see them well. So fake is a DSL for build tasks. DSL means domain-specific language. I'm not sure if everybody knows this term. Basically, it means that this is kind of a computer language that's specialized for helping you with some domain. Well, the domain here means building and deploying applications. So whatever you need to do to get your source codes from Subversion or Git or wherever, and publish an application, get it to the user, that's what fake is supposed to help you with. So it has some support for checkout, for building applications, for running tests, for I don't know, copying files, for zipping files, creating packages, and so on and so on. It can also report results, of course, and it's cross-platform, so you can run it on Windows, on Mac, on Linux. There are two big versions of fake, fake 4 and fake 5. The difference is that, well, fake 5 is obviously newer, and it works for .NET Core. Fake 4 is for the big .NET. I will be actually talking about fake 4 because that's what I have experience with. The versions are slightly different. There's been a really big refactoring, but the differences are not that big. The migration is pretty straightforward. So it's not a problem. It's not like it's a different project or something completely different. So why should we use fake? Question is first, why do we actually need the build scripts? Because you can do a lot of the stuff that fake solves, you can do with Teamcity or Team Foundation Server. So that's the first thing. But so the answer is actually that you can't do everything in the continuous integration tool. I will be mostly talking about Teamcity because I know that one, but I assume that Team Foundation Server is like similar to that in this regard. So you can't do everything while you can do anything with fake, with build scripts. For example, in one project, what we did was we had some translations in LingoHub, which is like a localization service. And during building, the build scripts called the LingoHub API, downloaded the translated resources, and added them to the package. It's just something that you can't do with just Teamcity or TFS because there are no plugins for that. Another advantage of build scripts is that the versioning or change tracking of the scripts is easier than if you just use TFS because you just click, 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 and you have everything. But if you mess up, then it takes time to go through the history and revert everything. It is possible to version the configurations of Teamcity, but it's not as straightforward as with build scripts. And also, you can run the builds independently. You don't need the build server. So if you just write them, it's easier. You can debug them easily. You don't need the server to do that. So it's usually faster actually to develop the scripts. Why fake and why not some other projects? it's a powerful DSL, powerful tool. It's quite easy to use, even if you don't have any experience with FSHARP. It's I don't know if I actually mentioned that, but it's written in FSHARP. So if you use fake, then you have to use FSHARP. But it's straightforward. I taught people like during half a day about fake, and they are able to use it since then. So even without prior FSHARP experience. It's easily extensible. So if something is not available, then you can just write your own code and use that. Unlike, I don't know, like NAND or something like that, where it's quite hellish to write some extensions. It's a proven major project with plenty of users. There's a link here. I'm not sure if it's going to work. Let's just say that you trust me. But it's used, for example, on akka.net or Solr.net, Elasticsearch.net, other projects. Mostly, of course, FSHARP. A big advantage, I think, is that you standardize on .NET code in your toolchain. So if you write some helper function for your application, you can also call it from fake. You don't need to write it again or do some special hacks to call them from any other tools. And for me, a big advantage is that you get to use FSHARP. So I'm going to show you some examples. So, okay. So this is how fake script might look like. I will actually skip over some details. I will just show you the core, the important parts. Okay. So this would be, say, stored in a file, and this is the absolute minimum that you need to do. You have to reference fake library, and you do that like this. The #r and path to the fake libdll. You call open fake, which open is like a using in C#. You define some targets. Targets being one unit of work that you need to do. Just one thing, like build application or test it or copy the files from here to there, stuff like that. And you can start the targets like this, right? Run target or default. Okay, the target looks like this. This is actually a function. It's nothing really special. So you use the keyword target, you give it some name, and you define the function. This is sort of like a lambda in C#. You can see that the syntax is almost the same. Okay. And here you put your code, whatever you want the function to do. That's where you usually use the fake modules and fake functions. For example, trace means that you write something on the console. Okay. So I'll show you an example. I'll do it like this. Okay. And now I don't see anything. How to build an application. So say that you have an application like this, a solution with two projects. One is a simple console application, one is a Windows service, and you need to build it somehow outside of Visual Studio, of course. So building this means doing several steps. So can you see it? Sure. Yeah. Let's do it like this. Let's just look at this part. So first you need to clean the output directory because you don't want some garbage that stayed there from before. You build a solution, you copy the binaries where they should be placed, and that's it. So those are the steps that you need to execute in this order. Hello. So one thing that you see that in Fake you can define dependencies between the targets. So say that you want to do the build, and with this arrow just tells you that the build target depends on the target copy binaries. This one in turn depends on build solution. This one in turn depends on clean. So let's try to execute it, and then I will show you how the targets actually look like. Okay, just so you trust me. Here's the directory where the output should appear. So I'll do build, and nothing happens, of course. Okay, now it's building. Script is finished, and we have a build here. There are actually three projects, one on the same level, so it's included. I run the application, and it's done. Okay, so the Fake script, what it does is first it looks at the target that you tell it to do to run, which we told that we should run the build target. It checks the dependencies, so it sees that the build depends on this one, on this one, on this one, and finds out the order of targets that it should run. So here you can see that, well, you can hopefully see that the order in which it will run is clean, build solution, copy binaries, build. And then it will execute the targets one by one. Okay.
So make a typo in the target.
Then it will, of course, cry. You can try that. See, there's an exception because it doesn't know this target. Copy bin jaris. Okay, there are just these targets, and it will just tell you if you do something wrong. And I'm going to show you. So then it runs all the targets as defined, and when finished, you see a nice summary. You will see shortly. So we ran these targets, and it took some time to run them. Total was 2 seconds. Okay, so targets might look like this. Usually, if you do something that's like not so special, then the usage is really simple. If you do something special, then it might get a bit more complex, which I will show you in a minute. So say that we want to clean the directories, just delete everything that's here in the, under the build directory. You just say, okay, clean the directories and give it give this function list directories that it should remove. If you want to build solution, you just say. I'm going a bit quickly here because I don't want to go like deeply enough into that. But you just say, okay, take the solution, run ms build debug, and this is a special thing in FSHARP. You need to tell it to ignore the results, because in FSHARP you can't just call a function that returns anything and just ignore it. You need to handle it somehow. So if you don't want to do it, you have to explicitly tell the compiler, okay, I don't care about the results here, just ignore that. So that's this ignore. So it does nothing basically for you. Okay, and the copy binaries I will not explain now. And the target, the build, is actually like just a placeholder target. So we can define all the dependencies and always run just the build. Okay. So it's just a real quick example. If you want to, yeah, you see my notes. If you want to change the parameters, say you want to output the build somewhere else, which is something you do basically all the time when you in production. You just need to include the parameters in the command line. So you can say output is out, run the script, and hopefully there should be a new directory here. Okay. To define the parameters in the script, you need to do it like this. You call the function getBuildParameter or default, and you give it the name of the parameter. And if you don't have it in the script, if it's undefined, then you use this default value. Okay. So, any questions so far? No. So another example I'd like to show you is how to build and actually deploy a Windows service, because there's something a bit more involved. Well, not much, but it is. So at the moment we have this Windows service here that's already built, and we need to install it on the computer somewhere. So. Mm-hmm. Jsem Wi-Fi, no, ale já si myslím, že to je s tím, že jsem tady manipuloval těma. Moment. Tohle je vidět nebo není?
Tohle je vidět.
Jo. Tak jo. Já to zkusím dělat jinak.
Máš dvě plochy?
Mhm.
Aha, to je ono.
Okay. So a different example would be to install a Windows service. And this is. No, ani ne.
Říká ti to někdo, kdo už s těma prostorama tak prošel.
Já jsem zase zvyklý vidět svoje poznámky, víš?
Tak je uvidí ostatní.
No, to už je jedno. Dám si teda jednu. Tak dobře, tak já to musím předělat. Takže duplicate. A teď to nejspíš není vidět. Takže já musím spustit ten... Tak. Už to je vidět? Takový rozbitý teď. No. Okay, great. So, next example would be to install a Windows service. So to do that, we need to build it, of course, which we are just now did. Then we need to copy it where it's supposed to run, and we need to actually install it to deploy it. For that, we can use something like a command line tool SC. I'm not sure if you know. SC creates a Windows service. So the scripts might look like this. To copy the Windows service, and I'm going to show you this one because it's looks a bit more like FSHARP. So you can see the script is basically the same as you would write in normal.NET. I'm sure that everybody can read what this script does, even though you don't know the functions probably. So you just get all the files that should be copied, and you tell the system, okay, take everything and exclude all PDB files. It's just an artificial example, but you can do it like this. You say, okay, now start where the Windows service is built and copy everything where it belongs to deploy path. Okay, so this would be like a more iterative C# way. Okay, and to deploy the service, you just take the path where it should run, skip this one, and use some modules that are included in Fake. So basically, you use service controller helpers to see if the service exists. If it exists, it's already installed, so you don't need to install it. You just copy the files. Well, correctly, you should stop the service, then copy the files, and then run the service again. But I skipped the examples here. If the service doesn't exist, then you install it somehow, and after it's installed, you start it. So let's see if this will work. So we need to the target deploy Windows service. Deploy Windows service. And now this is the important part. It says create service success. So now I should see in my computer there should be a Windows service running like fake service. Okay, so this is it. Okay. Now the thing is that while I talked how fake is powerful and can do anything for you, so you just use the modules. It actually cannot install the Windows service. So this is an extension that we need to write ourselves. And to do that, you have two options. Either you know F# or you want to learn it, so you write it in F#, which looks like this. You implement an F# module. So this is something like say assembly or like a static class would be more exact. And now this has this module has one function that takes host name of the service, and path to the service, and it will install it using the SC tool that I mentioned. And to use this module, you need to load an external script, open the module, like open import the assembly, and then you can just call the function. Like this. Another option that you have, if you don't know F#, you don't want to learn it, you just write the function in C#, and you produce a DLL, and you can call all the classes in that DLL like directly. So that would look like this. I have this one library, CN fake library. It has one class, Windows Service Helper, again, with just one function, install Windows Service, that takes the same parameters as the previous one. And it does the same. It runs the SC function, redirects the output to the console, and throws an exception if something fails. Okay, I just built this, and you need to include the DLL somewhere. Yeah, well, actually, I didn't put it anywhere. It's just here. And in your script, you can reference the DLL. So you reference the DLL like this. Again, you just use the #r, and you open the library. And then you can and use the class that you created in C# in .NET, which is probably what you're most comfortable with. So the only difference is that if you construct a new instance, you don't use new, you just do this. Just skip new, and then you can call the service. So we can try that too. I will uninstall the service first somehow, somewhere. Okay. I didn't write it. Yeah, I need to be an administrator. Really? I don't know why I can't get rid of it.
They call it presentation first.
An exception occurred while uninstalling. Yeah, let's install it again. I'll get rid of the remains later. So I'll try it. Yeah, I'll try it. I'll do it too. Here, fake service 2. And let's try. So we should now be calling this one, the .NET DLL. Okay, it's being used, so I need to deploy it somewhere else. Let's deploy to. Yeah. Why not? Okay, we don't have that much time. I'm gonna look at it later.
When you write the C#, F#.
Yeah. This is not a F# thing. I don't know. It's nothing's holding the service.
Can you integrate the production scripts?
I think you can. Let me check.
Write something F#,
Okay, Sharp fake. So the question is whether you can integrate PowerShell scripts. There's actually this whole list of modules, and I think there might be one. No, there's not. PS exec helper. No, I think I saw it somewhere.
Okay, so
but I didn't need it actually. Yeah, that's not wasn't necessary for me. Okay, so you saw how to install and never get rid of a Windows service. Okay, about the extensibility, I already shown you how that works, so I can just skip these, nothing else. So if you don't want to use fake or F#, there are plenty of alternatives for these scripts. For example, NAND, if you really like XML programming and you're living in the 90s, or you can use MS Build.
Okay,
or
you want to sell us fake right now.
I'm just right.
No, I'm just.
But yeah.
Let's pretend you are the business guy and you want to sell us fake. Why should I use fake instead of MS Build? MS Build is standard. It's blah 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 blah. And now,
honestly, I don't know MS Build like the whole solution. I only ever used it to build the applications.
Okay,
so I can't compare it to MS Build.
Okay, so and if you compare it to NAND?
If you compare it to NAND, then fake is easier in several ways. You don't have to use XML to run the scripts, which I think is a huge advantage. It's more easily extensible because it's more convenient. You just write your functions. You don't need to write them, debug them somewhere else, and then include them in some external scripts. But it's, I'm sorry.
For you, F#. You are quite.
No. You weren't here for the start of the presentation, but actually, even if you don't know F#, you can use fake. And if you don't want to use it, there are other alternatives like Cake, which is the same thing, only using C#. Okay, or PSAke or Rake or any Ake thing. Yeah. So that's the thing. I'm not saying that Fake is like the best thing since sliced bread. I'm just saying it's way better than NAND. That's the project I have experience with.
That's not very big deal.
Yeah. I'm not.
Challenge you.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I can't compare it to MS Build. Okay, so those are the alternatives. So the good things about Fake, in my opinion, are that it is easy to use. Like I already mentioned that I taught this to people like in half a day, and they are able to use it, even though they are not F-sharpers. Neither am I. I never really used F# in production other than Fake or Canopy. I'm still just learning it. Okay. There's plenty of support for classes out of the box. It's extensible. Of course, for me, the advantage is that you use F# and you get to learn something new, which I think is it's not an argument for using it in production, but if you're contemplating it, it might sway you this way.
Some simple way how to call it in TFS deploy.
You can just, well, again, I don't know TFS. We used it in Teamcity, but we just ran it from command line. Yeah. Okay, you just run it from the command line, and you can put all the parameters on the command line. It works quite well. So I'm not sure if TFS has some plugins for it or not. So I don't know that one. Okay. The bad things are you have to learn something new, and of course, if you don't know F#, then sometimes the messages might feel somewhat cryptic, because it takes getting used to. I have to admit this. And the ugly things are there are no reassuring braces that you all know and love, and the documentation since Fake 5 is I think not that good, because it's still sort of in the middle of migration to Fake 4, so it's working, but it's sort of unfinished. So it might get. It might be a bit of work.
These days is bad documentation almost to any living library. So
yeah, that's true. But before Fake 5, the documentation was really good. There was a great quick start that you just used, and you could be like up and running in half a day. So it's definitely a step backwards. Okay, that's it from me. So I don't know if you have any other questions.
Who's your favorite HR?
I mean, related to to the presentation, of course. Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't compare with MS Build. I just don't have experience with that. That's why I only mentioned it as an alternative. Essentially, well, in my opinion, I wanted to tell you about this project, but the decision is always on the people who will work with it. So if you're not comfortable with F#, of course you will not use Fake.
No, my idea when I saw it could be better in like instead of using MS Build to be able to let's say parameterize the deploy, because right now we have copy-paste deploy on every environment. I guess I'm not sure, but I think it's like that. But this you can like C programming in some maybe stronger language, even it's Fake or Cake, whatever. And then you can use the same deploy just with the different parameters for every environment. And if you want to change something, you will change it on just one spot. You know, because guys, when they try to do a new deployment, a new environment, it takes the same time like to do it from scratch. So that's maybe the reason for using it.
Yeah, well, if it's not possible to parameterize MS Build, then it would be it's probably worth considering something else.
But I'm actually show you. Here, it's more or less use UI, because if you click some deployment UI, then you mess something else.
I guess we use a lot of PowerShell scripts and things like that. Anyway, you know, so maybe if it's in some code, it's testable, it's like more convenient. Let's say the cake would be a alternative for us because we all use C#, so we want to have something which is more suitable for us.
Or maybe even the PSEC if you're able to write the PowerShell script.
FSHARP maybe a little bit tricky, but compare C# and PowerShell, and somebody's not familiar with PowerShell, it will be easy to adopt the C# and this basic infrastructure.
Yeah, as I said, to use the cake, like, and maybe
just take the cake.
Yeah, it's similar.
yeah.
Does it have IIS plugin so you can stop the website?
It used to. I'm not sure about the new version, but it used to. Yeah, it was possible to do that. Yes. The only thing that we didn't have when we used it is actually this installing of Windows services. So that's what we had to write. But otherwise, we didn't actually use Docker or stuff like that. So this is like the old school. But everything else was there. Takes some getting used to some of the things, but because it has like some shortcuts, like for example, instead of this one, like system path combine, you can just use 2 adds, but you don't have to use those. Like I said, it's I look at it more as a set of modules that will help you do something that you would have to do anyway. Only you don't need to program them. It's not a rocket science. Nothing complicated actually. Okay. So if that's everything, thank you for your attention. Until next time. Goodbye.